This is a UC San Diego Blinkcast.
Thanks everybody for coming. This is the faculty and staff training, mostly staff training, for the individual development plans for graduate students. My name is Zoe Ziliak Michel. I work in the Office of Graduate Studies. I'm the graduate fellowship advisor, but I'm also in charge of managing this training, or the UCSD implementation of these individual development plans for graduate students. So today I'll go over the agenda first. We're going to have a welcome from Kim Barrett, Dean of Graduate Studies. Then we will do introductions so we all know who we are. Then I'll give you an overview of what an individual development plan is. And then we're going to go over the National Institutes of Health policies and then the Office of Graduate Studies implementation of those policies for IDPs. Then we'll talk about how to create an IDP. And then we're going to do what's called a poster session, which is a sample of an exercise that you can do with your students when you're training them to make these. Okay, so I'll turn it over to Dean Barrett now.
Thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and hear about this. As I think everybody knows, since they're here, the NIH did announce a requirement for individual development plans for students and other trainees that are supported by NIH funding. And so in part, we are sort of here because we have to be. We have decided as an institution to kind of take a train-the-trainers approach. We feel that this working with our graduate students, postdocs, will be much more effective done in the setting of the department or program or the sort of local environment that they're working with, but also from a practical standpoint, there's no way that Zoe, as a single individual, can train every single graduate student, nor can her counterpart in the postdoc affairs office train every single postdoc. We just simply have too many. We do anticipate that this will be something that other agencies will pick up on, so I think it's going to be a much broader mandate than just the NIH over time. I'm sure that Zoe will speak to that. That's why we have to be here, but we're also here, I think, because it's absolutely the right thing to be doing. We've heard a lot from our graduate students and our postdocs that they're looking for more structured ways to have conversations about their career plans and intentions. We know that not all of our graduate students and postdocs are going to convert into clones of their mentors. There simply aren't enough academic positions to go around. And in fact, we need students who are trained at the high level that our wonderful graduate students and postdocs are to move into other sectors of employment as well, because their experience and expertise is incredibly valuable. And we also know that a number of our trainees come to UCSD for their advanced training with every intention of going into some employment sector other than being a PI in an institution like UCSD. So the IDP process, as you'll be hearing, is a way for students to start thinking about what their plans are and to map onto those plans activities that they have either done or that they need to do to best prepare them for whatever their career goal might be. And then to have a sort of structured way of having that conversation with their advisor, with other mentors who might be assisting them in thinking through their career goals. And really, so not only are we here because we have to be, but because it's really a good thing to do. And I think every high-quality institution that we compete with is really going through this process because it's a good thing to do for our students, it's a good thing to do for trainees. It's a good thing for the faculty too, because it really gives them a vehicle to have those conversations and, frankly, to fill in the sort of gaps where their expertise may not be sufficient to advise students who want a career path that's very different from their own. So again, I applaud you all for taking the time to be here. I'm sorry I can't stay for the whole session because I have to go to a meeting at the Office of Research Affairs to discuss a sort of related system-wide project. But I know that Zoe's put a very effective training together, and I hope you'll have a good time, as well as being informed.
Right. Thank you, Kim.
Thanks.
So I wanted to start with giving just an example of, this is for biology PhDs, which not all of you work with, but just for example, when we talk about IDPs, we're going to talk about various career paths that people might be considering, right? And you can see that every year 16,000 students in the US start biology PhD programs. Of those, 9,000 finish. But they go into all sorts of different careers. Of course, we think of them as going into tenure track faculty positions, but there's also lots of non-tenure track faculty positions these days, as you probably know. And of course, they can do non-research but science-related jobs, non-science jobs completely, industry research, government research, and other things that, well, I guess the non-science kind of covers the other things. But what I really like about this slide is that it shows that the faculty job is really the alternative career these days. We talk a lot about alt-ac careers, alternatives to academia, that when people are going through the PhD process, they might think about an alternative, but really it's almost like the faculty job is the alternative, because fewer than 8% of entering PhD students are going to become tenure track faculty. But over half of them say that's what they want to do. So part of the IDP process is sort of encouraging them to think about a plan B. Even if this is what you really want, what happens if that doesn't work out for you? What is your backup plan? All right, so what is an individual development plan? It's basically a tool that helps you think about what concrete, achievable steps you can take right now in the next year to achieve your long-term career goal. Some of us might have had this experience of you graduate college and you all through college you've thought, I was going to do this when I graduate, and then you graduate and you realize, oops, I didn't actually do anything that will make me get that job. So it's a way to think, rather than having this pie-in-the-sky career goal, what can I actually do to make that a reality? So there's a process of working backwards when making an IDP. The first thing is you need to figure out what career you want, or what careers you might want, because you can't figure out what steps to take until you know where you're going, right? You have to set your goal before you can set your path. And then you sort of think backwards and think about, okay, what skills do I need in order to actually have that career? If I want to be successful in that career, what skills will I need to have? And then, how do I get those skills? Do I have those skills already? And if not, what work can I do in the short term to develop those skills to make that career a reality for me in the long term? And your IDP will also have discussion comments from various mentors, and then it needs to be revised every year because, of course, you meet goals, so you set new goals for the next year. I cannot emphasize this enough. The benefit of doing the IDP does not come from filling out the form. So you have to emphasize to your students here, if they spend 30 minutes filling out this form and call it done, they are not going to benefit from this process. The benefit comes from sitting and thinking and devoting time to really thinking about what they want to do. It's about reckoning, pondering, thinking, you know what? 3 years ago, this is the job I wanted, but I don't think that's what I want anymore. I really want to do something different. Or, well, this is what I want to do, but I haven't really made any progress towards that. So I really need to knuckle down and actually make it, work towards making that a reality, right? It's about being honest with yourself, considering alternatives, thinking about what you really want. And I have been encouraging students also to take this opportunity to talk with their spouse or partner and have difficult conversations they might have been putting off, like, what if we get tenure track positions at different institutions? Is one of us going to follow the other, or are we going to live apart? Or if the partner is not in academia, if I get a tenure track position at Podunk U, are you going to follow me? Things like that about where are we going with our future as a family, as a couple, whatever it might be. I think that's not really part of the IDP, but I think this is a good chance to have those discussions with your partner. All right, so why do we think that IDPs benefit people? Well, there was a survey of about 7,600 postdocs that Sigma Chi held, and they found that having a structured postdoctoral program, which often included an IDP, was correlated with a better postdoc experience. They had higher job satisfaction, so they were more productive. People who had IDPs had 30% more publications during their postdocs than those who did not. And they had fewer conflicts with their advisors. Those who did not have an IDP, 22% reported serious conflicts with their postdoc mentors, and only 7% of those who did have an IDP reported that. Now, all of this is correlation, not causation. It wasn't a randomly assigned trial, but still it's the best data we have, and we think it indicates that these will help. And as you probably know, the National Institutes of Health have strongly encouraged, which we take to mean required, all postdocs and graduate students on NIH-sponsored awards to have an IDP by October 1st of this year, okay? So let's cover the NIH IDP policy. So this is effective October 1st, and it applies to all NIH-funded grad students and postdocs. So that includes master's students, if you've got an MD, Ph.D. student, even if you have an MD student who is funded by the NIH long-term, it's supposed to apply to them. Now, apparently UCSD has a program where some MD students are funded by the NIH just for 3 months during one summer, and we've decided not to require them to do an IDP because it's logistically difficult for such a short funding period of time. But if they're funded for longer than that, they need to have an IDP. And this is going to be reported as part of the RPPR, the Annual Progress Report for the NIH awards. But you're not going to submit the actual IDPs to the NIH. So they aren't collecting tens of thousands of IDP forms from all these graduate students and postdocs. They just want to report that, yes, it's being used. And sort of like the responsible conduct of research. They don't ask you to turn in your syllabus from responsible conduct of research. You just verify that you've done it. So let's see what I was going to say about that. Oh yes, so we have Ginger Hazen, who's in charge of the postdocs, and I have been working on a sample RPPR that you might show your PIs for what does this look like when you're doing this report. We have it made. We're waiting for like one more person to approve it. It's one of those things where it's a single piece of paper and then 10 people need to approve it. So once that gets done, then we'll send it out, and then you'll have a sample of what we think is our best guess of what the NIH is looking for on these RPPRs. Then, for more information, I strongly encourage you to refer to the NIH notice and the Rock Talk blog about this. They just put out a revised notice. It's NOT-OD 14-113 that clarifies, oh, thank you, gosh. It's supposed to clarify what requirements are from the NIH. I still find it frustratingly vague, but please do read this for more information. And then for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, Sally Rocky, the Deputy Director for Extramural Research at the NIH, she has this blog called Rock Talk, which takes the NIH policies and then puts it in human terms. So she has this post from July 23rd of last year where she explains why they think IDPs are important, why they decided to implement it, and sort of in human terms says this is what we expect you to do. So I would encourage you to review that.
Can you send us the link to that?
Sure, I can do that. Also, as a heads up, gosh, I'm sorry. The American Heart Association, the AHA, does have a similar IDP requirement. Unlike the NIH, the AHA is collecting the students' IDPs, which I don't like. I think that these are fairly private documents, but that's the requirement. So as I was saying, the AHA is collecting the students' IDPs, and they are requiring this for all fellows at the time of application for the fellowship, whereas the NIH is just requiring it once they're funded. The AHA wants them to do it before they even apply. So just a heads up on that. If you have American Heart Association funded people, they should also be doing this. And we expect that other agencies might pick up these same requirements. So really, if you have students with any kind of extramural funding, they might as well at least already know about it because it might be coming as a requirement. And we do believe that it's going to help everyone. So we encourage this for all graduate students, whether or not it's required for them. So the NIH has requested that each institution develop a standardized IDP form, and as you saw in my email, we have done that. I sent it to you as an attachment, and it's also available online. And I'll show you that in a second. So how is the Office of Graduate Studies implementing this policy then? So as Dean Barrett mentioned, I cannot train all the thousands of graduate students that we have at this university to use this. So we're doing this train the trainer approach. So we're making individual academic departments and programs responsible for training faculty as needed and graduate students in the use of the IDP and tracking their completion. So your departments are responsible for figuring out which graduate students need to have this, and then teaching them how to do it, and then making sure that they do it, okay? So that when it comes time to report back to the NIH, you can confidently say, yes, I have evidence that this student has done it, okay? You can schedule your training according to your own needs. Some of you might only have 3 students to train a year, some of you might have 30, so of course you're gonna need to do things differently. To support this, OGS is offering this Train the Trainer workshop. We're also putting a reminder on the grad student spring evaluation, so there's gonna be a question on the evaluation that says, is this student required to have an IDP, yes or no? If so, have they done it, yes or no? Just as a reminder so that their faculty members can look at that and remember to do it. We are also offering training of the T32 directors. Ginger Hazen and I did 2 sessions of this in May, I think, and about once a year we plan to do that as well. And then I am offering backup graduate student training once per quarter. So if you really only have 1 or 2 students who need this, rather than instituting your whole training program yourself, you can send them to me as a backup. But if you've got lots of them, then you need to do it. So I did my first one of these in June, and I had 4 students show up. I'll do another one in the fall. Also, be aware that the postdoc policy is different. So the Office of Postdoctoral and Visiting Scholars Affairs is, the woman in charge of this is Ginger Hazen, and she is in fact training postdocs directly. So every 2 months, she's holding a workshop for incoming postdocs, training them to do IDPs. And if you have more advanced postdocs, you can still send them to her if you want to get the training. And, well, let's do the questions. Okay. You might be wondering then, does OGS anticipate requiring IDPs for all grad students? No, we currently don't. We encourage it for all grad students. We think that they will all benefit so long as they take the process seriously, but we're not requiring it. We're just complying with the NIH policy. Can our department require IDPs for all grad students? Sure. Some departments have told me they love this idea and they want to go ahead and require it for all their students. That is great. If you want to do that, that's perfectly fine. Do your departments have to collect the completed IDPs? No, you don't have to. In fact, we discourage it. As I said earlier, this is a very personal document, and I think that students will benefit most if they take it seriously and if they're honest on it. And the more pairs of eyes they expect to see on this IDP, the less honest I think they're going to be. So we would encourage you, rather than collecting the IDPs, to maybe just collect the first page or get some kind of signature, something else to verify that they've done it. Now, I don't think you should just email them and say, have you done this? And they email back and say, yup, because they're probably lying. So something that you can trust, but maybe don't collect the whole IDP, although you can if you feel that you need to. How often do the students need to update their IDPs? Once a year. That's pretty straightforward. And how often do you need to train these people? It's really up to you. I see no reason for any individual to get trained more than once a year. But I do think that you'll probably want to train the grad students at least twice during their doctoral program, because I think maybe if you train them in their first year, they'll think, oh, I know what I'm doing, I don't need to pay attention to this. And then if you get them again in their 4th year, they might say, you know what, maybe I should take this seriously. So I would do it at least twice during the doctoral program. And the faculty, make them aware of it. Maybe at a faculty meeting you bring it up, make sure they know about it, train them as you see fit once in a while. Do they have to use the standard UCSD IDP form and fill out the whole thing? No. There are lots of IDPs out there, and they can find the one that is best for them. We've developed this form, they're welcome to use it, but if they find a different one online that they like better, that's perfectly fine. I also sent you the Division of Biological Sciences materials, and I think those are really great for people who are going into academia. I think that their IDP is not so great for people considering alternative careers, but that's something your students might use if they're definitely going into academia. Okay, what questions do you have about policy? Yes?
Are the difference between the grad students and the postdocs, because I want to say on the website it said that the Office of for postdocs and visiting scholars, they were collecting?
Yeah, they are collecting the IDPs, that's right.
Okay, but you're not for the undergraduates?
For graduate students.
For graduate students, I mean. Yeah. Okay.
You mentioned that postdoc policy is different and that they'll be training every 2 months. Who does that again?
Her name is Ginger Hazen, Hazen. and it's vhazen for Virginia at ucsd.edu. Yeah.
Do you anticipate that this will become a requirement for students to put it on NSF?
We don't have indication of that yet, but maybe. Yeah, so I think the answer to all those questions is maybe, probably someday.
Okay, thanks.
And let me take this opportunity to show you our website with more information that you can refer people to. So the first time I did this training, the staff said, can we have a website that we can send faculty to? And I said, oh, that's a really good idea. So this is actually being hosted not by OGS, but by OPVSA. So if you go to postdoc.ucsd.edu/IDP, that's where you'll see it. And there's an overview, and you've got the form. And we have it separated into information for faculty, grad students, postdocs, staff, and financial and grants management staff as well. So, and we welcome feedback on this website. If you review it and see something that's missing, let me know. It is a work in process. In progress. Okay, as you come up with other questions, please do ask me. But for now, we'll move on to how does somebody create an IDP? And so I want to emphasize again, this is something that's going to take them a lot of thought and a lot of time. They should be devoting, I'm going to say a couple weeks, not 8 hours a day for a couple weeks, but an hour a day for a couple weeks or even longer to thinking about this in one way or another and spending some time thinking about it. So, like I said, you've got to start with figuring out what your goal is. So let's do some career exploration, right? Thinking about what might I want to be when I grow up. So, and one way to do that is through personality exploration. So there are some books that students can read to think about this, or you guys can if you decide to do an IDP yourself. There's Please Understand Me by Kiersey and Bates, which talks about, I think, communication styles and how that fits with careers. And then the classic What Color is Your Parachute, which some of you might have already read and hopefully found useful. I don't know. I haven't read it myself, actually. And a book that I really recommend is So What Are You Going to Do With That by Basala and Debelius. This is aimed at PhD students or people with PhDs who are leaving the academy. So it's alt-ac careers focused. And it really helped me. I have a PhD in linguistics, and as I was deciding not to pursue a tenure track position, I read this book, and it gives you a lot of ideas. It's where I learned about informational interviews, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I find it very helpful. There's also the Career Services Center right here on campus, and among other things, they offer the Myers-Briggs test for free, although I just read an article about how useless the Myers-Briggs test is, so maybe they shouldn't do that, but there are a lot of other things that the Career Services Center can help them with. The contact there is Toni Mahoney, Mahoney. She's currently on maternity leave, but she'll be back pretty soon, and they do have a substitute filling in while she's on maternity leave. And then there are these career values cards that some of you might want to order. Including shipping, I paid $15 for these, and it gives you a worksheet that you can copy. And you separate values into, you're supposed to say, like, I always value this, I sometimes value this, and like pick your top 10 and then narrow it down to your top 5. And there are things like, what do you want in your career? So artistic creativity, engage in creative work in any of several art forms. Challenging problems. Engage continually with complex questions and demanding tasks, troubleshooting and problem solving as a core part of my job, etc. I was able to get it down to 11. I couldn't get it down to 5. But it makes you think about, there are things that this pointed out that I value that I had never even thought about valuing because I took it for granted. Like one of them is safety in the workplace, like physical safety. Like I really value that to the point that I had never thought about value my physical safety. So anyway, the company is Nodel, and you might want to order these and let your students use them and use them yourself. They're pretty interesting. There's also online the Kiersey Temperament Sorter. This is the same Kiersey as Kiersey and Bates of Please Understand Me. It's online and it is free. I took it. I am a guardian protector. It's free. It's pretty fast. It gives you an idea of what you might be willing to do or want to do for a career. Then there's the Strengths Finder, which I actually highly recommend. I found this much more useful than things like this usually are. They give you a pretty in-depth analysis, and I found it revealing. So they have a list of 34 possible strengths, and they give you, for $10, they give you your top 5 of those 34 and explain what those mean and how that relates to your career. And if you really like it, then you can pay, I think, $85 and get an analysis of all 34 strengths. I haven't done that, but I definitely got $10 worth of value out of this. So your students might consider this. I thought it was very interesting, actually. So we've done some personality exploration. So now you've got to think about, well, what are my options? What jobs are out there, and what might I pursue? Well, once you have some ideas of things that you might want to do, you can go on informational interviews. Has anybody here done an informational interview? No?
Another lifetime.
In another lifetime. So I think I've done maybe 5 of them. And like I said, I learned about it from that book, so what are you going to do about it? For those of you who are unfamiliar with it, an informational interview is not a job interview. You are not allowed to ask for a job on it. What it is you're interviewing someone who has a job you think you might want, and you learn more about the job. So I advise people to take the interviewee out to lunch or at least coffee, do something nice for them, but then ask them, what does a typical day look like for you? What does a typical week look like for you? What do you like about this job? What do you dislike about this job? And then you can ask things like, what skills would I need to excel in this job? What can I do now to prepare to have this job in 3 years? What type of person usually likes this job? Things that let you learn about what it really does, because from the outside we often have an idea of what somebody does, and then when you actually do the job you realize, wow, this is totally different than I expected. This is a chance to learn that. So for example, I did a couple informational interviews with paralegals, and I learned that I do not want to be a paralegal. And that's really valuable information to have. And people should not be shy about asking for these. I have never had anyone say no. When you ask someone for this, you can have a very tenuous connection. I mean, I cold called someone that I had no connection to whatsoever, and he said yes. I cold emailed him. And also, like, in one case, I was talking to people. My friend had a summer internship at this job, and I said, hey, remember Megan who worked with you for 3 months? She referred me to you. Would you talk to me? And they say yes. You're basically asking people, will you talk about yourself for an hour? And most people are willing to do that. So people don't need to be shy about asking for these, and they can be very informative. I also recommend that if people are thinking about leaving the academy, they might want to join the Versatile Ph.D. This is an online community of former academics, people who are ABD or PhD and have left the academy or are thinking about doing so. I have found them very supportive, and UCSD has a subscription to the premier content for this. So if they go to the Career Service Center website and sign on through that, then they can access the prime content, which among other things has an archive of the career panels that they've done, where they get a group of academics or former academics who now work in finance to come and answer a bunch of questions about what's a career in finance like. And so there's a whole long list of career panel archives, and people can access that, and they should be very helpful in finding out what jobs are out there that they might not have heard about. Similarly, there is this website, Science Careers. They have lots of articles and resources for people in the sciences. And I sent you guys the myIDP. Did I send you the link to it? I hope so. Yes. And as you saw, I hope you did it, or I hope some of you did at least. It'll give you a rank of 20 scientific career paths that might fit your skills and interests. I don't know how long it took you. It took me about 20 minutes. I think if I had taken it more seriously, it would have been 30 or 40, something like that. Mm-hmm. And then you would have seen something like this. This is not mine. This is somebody else's, but it matches your skills and your interests. And this is not prescriptive. This person does not have to go into science education for non-scientists just because that's at the top of their list, right? It's an idea generator. They might say, oh, science policy. I never thought about that, but maybe I want to be in public affairs and a scientific society. I think I'd like to learn more about that. So it's a way to get ideas of things that you might be interested in, and then you can go learn more about them by reading about them, doing informational interviews, what have you. Okay, so I've done my personality exploration. I've done my career options exploration. Now I've got to think about, okay, if I kind of know what careers I might want, what skills do I need for that? And what skills do I have for that? Okay, so we're gonna do an exercise that you can do with your students as well in training. I should mention also that the Career Services Center has various skills assessments that they'll give. I used to do one of those in these trainings, but people didn't like it much, so I'm not doing it anymore. But there are various options that students can get help with from Tony Mahoney. All right. And I need a marker. All right. So I used to do this with a graduate coordinator because I used to get a lot of graduate coordinators coming. But now, what are most of you people? What you? Advisor, student advisor? Okay, so actually we do have some student affairs staff here, so we'll do grad advisor / coordinator, because they're different but related jobs, okay? So what are some duties that a person with this kind of student affairs job has? Recruiting new students? Scheduling what?
TA assignments.
Okay. Other?
Grad student events and search.
Okay. Event coordination?
Manage the budget, make sure the students get paid.
Okay. Budget management. Okay, so I'm just going to pick a couple of these for an example, but you would do more with students in the training. So what kind of skills do you need to do event coordination?
Planning.
Okay.
Time management.
Time management? Budgeting, okay. Maybe negotiation skills, if you have to do this with several people. Negotiating.
Details.
Yeah, attention to detail. And maybe an understanding of, like, you have to have a knowledge of what people are going to enjoy, which I think is maybe an empathy skill, maybe? Empathy. So that you don't plan a really boring event. Okay. And what skills are needed to manage TA assignments?
Communication with faculty.
Ah. And that probably includes both oral and written communication?
Budget.
I'm sorry?
Budget.
Okay, so more budgeting.
Coordination,
Coordination.
lots of coordination.
Okay. Coordination of
Schedules and timeframes. And also the students' own personalities. Some are not good at big classes, others are, you know.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
matching them with the right class.
Of personality match.
Maybe that falls a little bit under like analytical skills.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at what student has the right background to be a good TA in a certain class,
Okay.
as well as personality.
Mm-hmm. You have to have like a certain amount of institutional memory then as well. You have the history of what's worked in the past. Okay, so if you were doing this with your students, you might do more. And the idea is, first of all, it gets you to appreciate some skills that you might not have realized you had, right? So maybe you haven't thought about having empathy skills, but now you think, oh, actually, students seem to come to me more than they come to other staff members. I think I'm actually good at this, and I never thought about it. Or it could help you realize why you're not good at your job. Like maybe you suddenly realized, man, I'm really bad at understanding personality match. That's why I have a problem with that. that's something I need to work on this year, right? So it can help you set goals of, these are the skills that I need that I don't have, that I can develop in the next year, I hope. And this is an example of one that some students did, and you can see it's pretty extensive, for being a TA. And so you can see that they took a lot of time to think of a lot of things, and I don't expect you to be able to read this, but I will show you. So, for example, managing student issues. They decided this requires academic integrity, management of disruptive behaviors, they have to understand group work, they have to deal with students with disabilities, emergency management, communication, executive decision making, problem solving, interpersonal skills, listening skills, the ability to empower students, so an empowerment skills, and motivation. All that just for this one little branch, and then they've got it all over here. So if you take the time to do an extensive one with your students, they might come up with a lot of skills that, you know, like I said, they probably haven't thought about before much. Okay, so that is an activity that you can do to help them think about their skills that they need. All right, so I've thought about my personality, I've thought about my career options, I've set goals, and I've thought about what skills I have and what skills I need to get those careers. So now I'm ready to think about filling out the form. Again, this is not the point of the exercise. Filling out the form should not be their focus, but let's talk about how they would go about doing that if they're using the UCSD one. Okay, so first, at the start of the form is their career objectives. We do encourage people to have a plan A and a plan B. So this person, for example, primarily wants to be a researcher at a university, but if that doesn't work out, their backup is to teach at a community college. And if people want to add more boxes to have a third choice and a fourth choice, that's fine too. They could also put in something like, if they're not sure yet, they could say, for now my career goal is learn more about teaching at a community college and see if I want to do that. Okay? So then the next thing is they put in their mentors. We strongly encourage people to have more than one mentor. Probably the first person they list is going to be their dissertation advisor, but we encourage them to have others because, so let's say you want to teach at a community college, maybe your dissertation advisor is really good at research but doesn't focus very much on his teaching, so you go find another faculty member who is more interested in her teaching and you work with her to develop your teaching skills or to at least talk about how to develop your teaching skills. Or you could talk with someone at the CTD, the Center for Teaching Development, and get them to mentor you in developing your teaching skills. And you can also have mentors who are completely outside the university. So let's say I've decided I want to be a science journalist and write newspaper articles for the general public to learn about science. Then I might try to find a mentor who's a current journalist and see if I can work with them to learn how do I actually, what can I do while I'm still in grad school to make it realistic for me to be a journalist later on. So people should have multiple mentors if at all possible. And the mentorship should have the 6 C's: collaborative, collegial, cooperative, confidential, confidence building, and comforting. Excuse me, I particularly like to emphasize the confidential aspect. These people need to be trustworthy and you need to know that you can shut the door to their office and they aren't going to go blab about what you're talking about to everyone. That's my personal emphasis, I guess. So how do you choose mentors? Because people might say, well, this faculty member's right here, but how the heck am I going to find a journalist? So there are some do's and don'ts. So the first thing to do is just identify somebody with the job that you want and some kind of connection. And it can be really tenuous. Or, as I said earlier, sometimes just cold emailing people works. And I think that a good way to start a mentorship might be to ask, if you haven't met this person before, might be to ask for an informational interview. So, meet them for lunch for 1 hour, talk with them, see if you click, and if so, then that can be your first step towards developing a mentor-mentee relationship. People should contact these potential mentors about a specific problem as much as possible. So when you say, I want to be a faculty member, I want to be a tenure track faculty member, how do I get better at that? Somebody might want to help you, but it's really vague and they don't know what first step to take to help you with that. Whereas if you specifically say, with a different goal, I want to get an internship with a newspaper or magazine this summer, how do I do that? That's a much more specific problem and someone is more likely to be able to figure out how to help you with that. The narrower the question, the easier it is for someone to actually help. Of course, you should make the interactions enjoyable and always respect their time. I think probably many of us have been in the case of giving our time and have someone not appreciate that at all. It does not feel very good. And your students might have understood this now that they've become TAs, like suddenly like, oh, now I understand why I was an annoying student, right? Like once you're on the other side of the table, it makes sense. So similarly, like emphasize to them that they do need to be grateful for the person's time. And again, to learn how to be a good mentee, they can be a mentor themselves. And a lot of them probably are mentoring people, like if they have undergraduates in their lab, and they're not just showing them how to do lab work, they're also answering questions like, should I go to grad school? How do I choose where to go to grad school? That's mentoring. So they can think about that, think about what they do for that, and then that'll show them how to be a good mentee. Some don'ts. Don't go up to someone and ask them, will you be my mentor? Faculty members might be used to this, but people outside of the university are not, and it can be very off-putting because what does that even mean? How much time do I have to give for this? Is this like a 3-hour-a-week commitment? What am I expected to do? It sounds like a real burden. So you ask them for small things like going out to coffee, and then you trick them into being your mentor. But don't ask it that way. Obviously, don't expect them to work around your schedule. You fit your schedule to theirs as much as possible. They are doing you a favor. And of course, never take them for granted. Always, always express your gratitude. Okay, this is something that I hope none of your students need. I hope none of them need it, but I think some of them will, so I want to bring it up just in case, okay? So, in a perfect world, all faculty members would be supportive of the idea of someone pursuing an alt-ac career. I was lucky to have that experience. When I told my dissertation advisor that I was not going to pursue faculty positions, she was supportive. She was disappointed. She thought I would be a good academic, but she knew that I needed to do what made me happy, and she knew that there were other viable careers out there, and so she was supportive. I hope that all of your students have that. But there are a few faculty out there who think that anyone who's not a faculty member is wasting their time, right? You hear horror stories of people pulling funding, making them switch advisors, etc. It's rare, but let's say that you're in that situation and you don't feel comfortable telling your faculty advisor that. You might consider doing a secret IDP. So the students can do their official IDP that they talk about with their dissertation advisor and that they mention to the NIH, but then on the side, they do their real IDP that they don't talk about with that faculty member, but they're learning all about how to be a science journalist, and they're actually working toward it. They just don't tell their advisor. I hope nobody needs this. I think it's much better to say, you know what, Dr. So-and-so, I want to be a science journalist. I think that's great, but I would rather they still be working towards the career that they really want than just not work toward it because they're afraid to talk about it. Okay, so the next section of the IDP then is the skills assessment. And so they've already hopefully thought about their skills somewhat, and then they're going to fill this out with skills that they already have, their area of strength, and then skills that they need, their areas to develop. So for example, this person thinks that they're already quite good at objective writing, like you do for journal articles. They're good at objectively reporting the results of their experiments. But they know that they need to work on their persuasive writing, which is a different skill, so that they can get grants, for example, okay? We have this separated into suggested areas of training. I don't think it's worthwhile to sit and think about, wait, which area of training does this fit into once you've decided you want to work on your persuasive writing? But it can go the other way around of getting ideas. Like, you might think, okay, what professional development skills do I need? And then that could generate ideas for you. I'm not in love with this suggested areas of training section. I'm more interested in what skills do they have, what skills do they need, but if the areas of training are helpful to them, they can certainly use it. Okay, so now I've done my own skills analysis. I've listed the skills that I think I have and need. Now I go talk to my mentors. So, what are we asking mentors to do? We're asking mentors, including faculty members, but also others, for this IDP to dedicate about 1 hour per year per student, we think. So they should have a separate meeting with their student, which is just focused on career development. The important thing is this should be a meeting separate from their research strategy meeting, right? The faculty members need to understand that if the goals they set are order 50 more mice and run this assay, that's not career development, right? So, and it's really easy for the conversation to get derailed if you try to split the time. So they should do a separate meeting where they're just going to talk about the grad student's career development. And the grad student should be prepared to tell the faculty mentor what their current career goals are. Hopefully they feel comfortable being honest. They're probably going to have to explain what an IDP is and why they're doing it. And then they should show them, these are the skills that I think I have right now and the things I think I need. Then the faculty member's responsibility is to give honest feedback. And I think this is a really good opportunity for them, because I know that some faculty members will have students who really aren't, don't have their stuff together, don't have their act together. And this is their chance to tell the student that. This is the chance to give difficult feedback, hopefully positive feedback as well. The faculty member can say, you know what, you're really good at public speaking and you don't have that on a list of your current skills. I think you should put public speaking on here because you're really good at that. But, honestly, I think that your interpersonal skills, you could try working on that, so you might want to do such and such in the next year to try to help your interaction with your lab mates, whatever. It's hard feedback to give, but this is their chance to do that. And so the mentor's responsibility is to carve out an hour to do this and to be honest. Those are the two responsibilities, basically. And the benefits of this are it gives you a clear expectation between the student and the mentor about their research and career goals, so they're all on the same page and they're not talking at cross purposes, right, with different assumptions, right? They know what the other's thinking. And yeah, the feedback helps the student adjust their plans so that they're more likely to reach the career that they want. Okay, next part is what I consider the heart of the IDP, which is, okay, so I've decided what I want to do later on. How do I actually make that happen? What am I going to do this year to make that career a reality 5 years from now, or however long it is? Okay, so you're going to come up, or the students are going to come up with action steps based on goals. And to create a little bit of structure, we try to create SMART goals. Other than a goal that is not stupid, do you know what a SMART goal is? Okay, sometimes I have people who've heard of it already. SMART goals are specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-bound. So specific, you don't want it to be vague. I want to build a professional network. Measurable, so not I'm going to meet some people, but I'm going to meet 3 people, because either you do that or you don't, right? So something that you can measure whether you've done it or not. Action-oriented, not I'm going to win the lottery, where, okay, you have to buy a lottery ticket, but that's really the only action you would take. Realistic, so not I'm going to have 5 first author publications this year. That's probably not realistic, right? But I'm going to have 1 first author publication this year is. And then time-bound, because you do need to set yourself a deadline for doing it, not someday I'm going to do this, right? So you get these, and then you have your plan for the next year of how you're going to work towards your goals. So let's look at an example. Oh, I guess I forgot that I had a turn to your neighbor thing. But if you want to, anybody want to think of a goal that they have, either a real one or an imaginary one, and express it as a SMART goal? It doesn't have to be career related. Like last time somebody talked about running a marathon, so something.
I actually do want to run a full marathon.
Okay. And are you working toward it?
No, I'm going to start working on it next month. I've done a couple half marathons before, but it's been a couple months since I've ran, so I need to pick it up again.
Okay. So can you express that as a SMART goal?
I will be focused in September. I set specific, starting September 1.
Mm-hmm.
Measurable. My husband does it with me, so we're going to be doing it together, and together we will achieve that goal.
Okay. And so the measuring is whether you run the marathon or don't, right?
Right.
So you can tell either you do it or you don't.
Right.
Okay.
Action. I need to train
Mm-hmm.
at least maybe 3 to 4 days a week. Realistic, I have until March, so I think it is realistic, and I've got the time to do it. So, and I want to start a couple of days a week, maybe 2 days a week, and then build it up to 3 in the coming months, and then 4. So to me, that's more realistic than starting out as 4 days a week trying to train.
Okay.
So the build up.
Mm-hmm.
And time bound, I have until March, so I'll complete the goal at the end of March.
Okay. Good. So that is a pretty good example, and it actually opens up to talking about micro goals later on. So we'll come back to that. Okay. So here's an example for the professional realm. let's say that someone's general goal is they want to build a professional network. Now you can see that this is not a SMART goal, right? Because it's, how do you know when you've built your network or not? But they can have some SMART action steps. So what are some action steps someone might take to build a professional network?
They can join LinkedIn.
Join LinkedIn, okay. And maybe you could then say, and connect with X number of people. Something else?
Attend networking events.
Okay, yeah, attend networking events. Okay, good. So this slide was made in advance, so I will tell you that this student has decided to present their research at a conference and meet at least 3 new people in their field. They're going to sign up for listservs so that they can, as you said, attend discipline-related networking events in San Diego. And they're going to go on at least 2 informational interviews, okay? So you can see that these are much more defined than generally build your professional network, right? So they're still not super smart, but they're much closer, okay? So we put that in the action step column. And then in some cases, there's going to be a frequency involved. So for the conference, let's say, is in September. And then the networking events, let's say there's one every month, but realistically, I'm pretty busy with my research. I don't think I can go every month, but I will set a realistic goal of going every other month, okay? And then the 2 informational interviews, there's no frequency for that, so that's NA. And now I need to make it time-bound, so I'm giving myself my target completion date. So the conference is in September, but then I want to follow up with people and solidify the connections, so I'm giving myself a date of October of this year. And then for the other 2, they're kind of ongoing, but I'll set a date of by the next time I do my IDP, right? And I'm doing that annually, so August of 2015 would be the next time I do it. Okay? And then we don't have a column for this, but I suggest that students might want to add a reward column. And I'm talking about immediate rewards, not long-term payoff. Because I think that academics are the people who are very good at saying, okay, if I don't go out with my friends tonight, then in 6 months I'll get an A, right? We're really good at delayed gratification. I think they should get some instant gratification for the things that are hard for them at least. So for example, I knew someone who was very introverted, and going on an informational interview, which I love doing, was really hard for her. Like, it took a lot of emotional energy for that. So she would go on an informational interview, and her reward for that was she got to read a novel for 2 hours and not feel guilty about it. Didn't have to think about her research, shouldn't be doing something else, she just got to enjoy reading that novel that night because that's her reward. Or so for me, I love informational interviews, but a networking event is like my idea of hell. So if I were going to a networking event, I would say, I will talk to 5 people in this room, and then I will bake brownies, So I mean, I'm serious about this. I think that they should come up with something instant that they can do to make up for the difficulty of some of these things that might not come easily to them. So they might consider adding a reward column. All right, so let's look at a little more at this action step of go on at least 2 informational interviews. We can talk about micro goals for this, because this is it might still be a pretty intimidating goal, okay? It might still seem like, wow, I have to meet all these people, I've got to do this, how am I going to make this a reality? It can still be somewhat daunting. So it can become easier if you break it down into micro goals. So for example, if you want to go on 2 informational interviews, your first goal is identify 3 or 4 people you're going to interview. Then the next thing is just writing an email, selecting questions for the interview, etc. Just the small components. And this makes it much less intimidating because, your second week, your goal is just writing an email. Well, I can write an email, right? That's so much easier than saying, I'm going to set up these informational interviews. And, oh, I can write a thank you note. That's really easy. It makes it a very small, very achievable step. So for the marathon example, right, you might say, my first goal is by the end of September to be able to run 15 miles without stopping. And for the next week, I will run 4 times, right? So you set up, rather than saying by March, I'm going to do this, right? You break it down into this is what I'm going to do right now. These are the little tiny achievable things that I can do. And so this makes things less intimidating for your students. And it's also really good for the kind of people who like to cross things off their list. Like some people will do a task and then write it down just so they can cross it off the list. If you're that kind of person, the micro goals are for you, because then you get to cross off a lot of things. Okay. All right, and then the last part of the IDP form is your long-term goals. this is the 5-year plan that we have, where the students are going to look ahead to, okay, so I've thought about the immediate year, but what's my long-term plan? You know, if I want to have this career in 5 years, 3 years, whatever it is, what's the longer arc of my goals? And it's a chance to think about maybe, by thinking about what you need to do in 4 years, that might make you realize something you need to do in 3 years. So for example, let's say I'm graduating in 3 years, and in 4 years I want to have an NIH K99 grant. Well, then I know that in 3 years I have to apply for a K99, right? So it makes you think about things that you have to do earlier. And actually, I think I would do this before they do the action steps for the year, right? First think about the long-term goals and then break it down to the immediate year. So I think the order maybe they should go in is first thinking about what career is down the road for them. All the career exploration, deciding what they want to do, and having plan B and so forth. Then think about the next 5 years. And once you've got that mapped out, then think about what are my action steps for the next year. So work backwards that way. That's the way I would do this. All right, so now you've made your plans. Now you talk to your mentors again. Ideally, this is a separate meeting from the skills meeting, but realistically, they might be the same meeting. You know, that's fine too. Or this can be done via email. So you meet with your mentors again, and you say, okay, so these are my plans. And the mentor says, that's good, but here's another action step. I think I want you to join Toastmasters so you can talk in front of people. Or, you know, they come up with additional action steps or additional long-term plans for them. And then, based on the feedback, the student is going to revise their IDP, update their goals, etc. And then, oh yes, they actually have to implement it, right? This is not an academic exercise. They're supposed to actually try to meet these goals. All right, and here are just a few of the resources available to grad students here on campus. This is obviously not comprehensive, but people should be aware of the Wednesday workshops that OGS hosts. These are, well, I do one on getting fellowships sometimes, and there are things on like mental health, staying sane in graduate school, and also career development workshops we host. And then the Center for Teaching Development, CTD, is what its name implies. And the people there are really passionate, actually. They're really enthusiastic, and I think they're great at their jobs. So I recommend them highly. And then in the Career Services Center, as I said, the woman's name is Tony Mahoney. She'll be back sometime in September. Okay, and then there is, under the action steps, there's this little progress check-off thing, so that when you're thinking about your IDP and you go back and look at it, ooh, you get to check off, I met this goal. Good job, me, right? Or you think, oh, you know what, this needs revision. I'm going to think about how to update my plans. Okay, and they have to update their IDP once a year, but of course you're welcome to do it more often than that if your plans change, what have you. Also, some people might want to have an IDP buddy. So some of your students might have like a dissertation writing support group where once a week they have to report on what progress they've made on their dissertation, and it's like standing on the scale in front of everyone at Weight Watchers. It makes you actually do something about your diet the day before. Similarly, they might want to have a partner who's doing IDP with them. I don't think they need to check in every week, but maybe once a month they meet and discuss what's your progress on your IDP to keep them on track. Just an idea. Okay, are there questions about creating an IDP? Okay, well, if you come up with them, don't be afraid to ask. Okay, and here, as I said, I did my first student training in June, and then I did a survey, and here are some of the responses I got back. So we're going to do this poster session. And the feedback that Ginger Hazen and I have both got is that the poster session is the best part of the training. So she's been doing this with postdocs, and the postdocs all say the poster session is really helpful. So I strongly encourage you to do this with your students when you're training them. So the student once said creating the poster was actually very helpful, and feedback from a faculty member was insightful. We do encourage you to have a faculty member present for the poster session to give them feedback, and I'll talk about that, in a little bit. And another student also said the professor coming in to review the poster was helpful, and it was helpful that the scenario was a safe space where honesty was valued. And I really liked getting this feedback. I think that a lot of times students are in a position where it's kind of scary to be honest about their plans. So I tried very hard to make people feel comfortable being honest about what they want to do. So of those 4 people who showed up to my training, only 1 is planning on going into academia. 1 is doing a mini MBA this summer and then is going to start her own business. 1 is going to, apparently museums, art museums hire people to verify the authenticity of artworks, and that's what she wants to do, is see like, oh, is this really a Van Gogh or is it an imitation Van Gogh? She's going to do that. And then the final person doesn't know what she wants to do, but she's pregnant and she knows she wants to find a career that will let her either work from home or have flexible hours. And I said, you know, that's great. She said, oh, I'm so sorry. I know IDPs are all about careers, but I'm thinking about my family. I'm like, that's fine. We're not career machines. So, you know, so we helped her come up with some ideas of ways she could find out about jobs with flexible work schedules or work from home opportunities that are still science related, because that's what she wants. And so people were able to be honest and people were supportive and discuss it with each other. And I think that's really important to create that kind of environment where people feel comfortable talking about what they really want to do and don't have to show bravado or whatever and pretend that they're all going to be, you know, whatever the ideology might prescribe. Okay, so let's talk about this poster session. So first of all, I want to talk about the materials you will need to do it. It's pretty straightforward. You need markers for everyone, and I have markers for everyone here. And then, so these sticky boards, they're not as expensive as they first seem. You can get them on Marketplace, and the first thing that comes up, I think I looked for like Post-it, easel, something like that. The first thing that comes up is like $30 for one. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't afford this. But then if you keep scrolling down, I got a 2-pack for $15. So it's not that bad. And yeah, so you should be able to find the money to do that for your department. And then the markers, and that's really all you need materials-wise. Personnel-wise, you need yourself, and then we recommend 1 faculty member for every 7 students who are participating. Now, usually probably your training will be pretty small, and so you just need 1 faculty member, but if you have a big one, then you might need to get 2 or 3 faculty members because people are going to be in small groups presenting, so we want 1 faculty member per group. Now, they don't need to come to the whole training. When you're talking about how to put together an IDP, the faculty members don't necessarily need to be there. They just need to dedicate, you know, an hour of their time to doing just the poster session, okay? And as you saw, the feedback is having the faculty member there to give feedback is valued by the students. Okay, so what do you do in the poster session? You're going to break people up into groups of 7 students or fewer. We have 7 people, perfect. Unless I miscounted, yes we do. Okay, and then you're going to everybody makes their own poster, right? Which is a presentation of, here are my career plans as they stand now. So it's sort of like a mini IDP that they put together in a half an hour instead of, you know, to prepare them for the real one that they're going to make over the next several weeks. Okay, so you're going to write out your name, department, and then they would put their research project title to help, you know, just to make everybody get to know each other. And then they're going to write out their career objective, and they can be, you know, so this person maybe be a tenure track professor, or if they don't know yet, then their career goal can be explore more about becoming a fighter pilot, for example. That can be their sort of 1-year plan, is to learn more about this thing that they might be interested in. Then they're going to write out 5 goals for the next year and try to make them SMART goals. You might not be able to write them out as SMART goals on the space of the poster, but at least verbally you're going to say it in SMART goal form. And then everybody presents. And it is important to have a timekeeper. Everyone gets 8 minutes. Some people think that 8 minutes means 20 minutes. So you got to have a timekeeper so that nobody eats up all the time. And you know, they present it and they say, okay, so my general goal is this, and as a SMART goal, I'm saying it is this, and maybe I have micro goals of this. And then both the faculty member who's there and then the rest of the group will give them feedback on, oh, you know what, you could also do such and such, or hey, my sister-in-law is a fighter pilot. I'll get you in touch with her so you can do an informational interview, right? Things like that. So there's feedback from the group. And so here is a sample poster. You can see Sarah's student is in bioengineering, and this is her project title. and she wants to explore more about careers in science writing. So she's got these 5 goals for what she's going to do in the next year, and some of them are working towards graduation, and some of them are working towards a science writing career. Okay, and so I would like you guys to put together a poster here in a session, and in a second, we're going to do a poster session. And for the purposes of the exercise, you can choose. You can either do, actually, I guess you have 3 options. You can do a real career goal that you're thinking about. If you are thinking about a promotion or a career change or something, you could do that. Or you could pretend to be a grad student and do a poster like they might make. Or sometimes people like to do silly ones, like I've seen somebody who had just messed up on Valentine's Day say his goal was to do a better job of Valentine's Day next year. So he's like going to go on informational interviews with other husbands to learn how to do Valentine's Day right, that sort of thing. If you want to do something silly like that, or like last time somebody was remodeling his kitchen, so he had goals for the kitchen remodel. That's fine too. And then you'll have this as an example, so if you want to use this example poster when you're training your students, you can. Okay? And oh, it's only 1:16. Wow, very early. Okay. So I'll give you the materials, and we will have about a half an hour to put it together, and then we're all going to present to each other. Okay? So we're going to ask that you bring your posters over here, and you can kind of stack them on top of each other. And then one at a time, we're going to present the posters. And then, like I said, you have 8 minutes each to talk about your career goals and your things. And then the other people are going to give feedback, like, oh, you could also do such and such, or, you know, oh, you could break that up into a micro goal like this, etc. So who would like to go first? Okay, good. And we'd like you to hold the microphone about like this, if that's okay. Okay.
So what I did, I'm from medicine, is I know I'm going to work 5 more years, because that means I'll have 30 years, service years, and then I figure in 5 years I'll decide, do I want to retire, or do I still have the energy and keep on working? So that's my first one. Second, in the 5 years and getting ready, if I do decide to retire, then, you know, pay off bills, look at my financial portfolio. It will all depend, can I afford to retire and, you know, live on whatever I'll have. And so at the 5 years, consider, you know, do I want to what do I want to do with my time? Because currently I don't have little hobbies and I don't really volunteer right now. So do I want to volunteer? Do I want to maybe go back to school and, you know, earn another degree, or what do I want to do? Or do I want to maybe even though I love working at UCSD, maybe, because I live in Santee, do I want to find something that's maybe closer to home? And because if I do retire, I'll have less expenses. And then maybe do some informational interviews to go out and see, you know, maybe there is another area that will, you know, make me passionate from what I do now, that I can maybe do for another 3-4 years. And then possibly, maybe if I could afford it, maybe remodel my kitchen if I reduce my debt. And so who's to say? So that's kind of what I was thinking.
Thanks. Do people have comments or suggestions?
A good suggestion is they've had a lot of classes here on campus for people who want to retire. So definitely take those, they're free.
Yeah.
Retirement Resource Center.
Yeah.
And all about financial issues.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Mhm.
Probably.
Yeah.
Got a good contractor that can help you.
Cool. But it's all depending if I can afford it, though. Yeah. So.
Maybe since you're looking to pay off your bills and review your financial portfolio, if you don't have a financial planner or an advisor, definitely look into
Yeah.
that.
No. Yeah. I do have one, so that's going to be part of the plan type of thing too. Yeah. Yeah. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So who's next?
I'll go since it's kind of on that. Not quite retirement age. But this is what I'm gonna do with a little closer. So I switched mine up. Instead of going toward career objective, but with the same idea, I went to, we would like to move to Kauai, basically. We do a lot of racing, we do a lot of surfing and golf. So for us, after the kids graduate, our last one graduates from high school, then what we'd like to do is move out and go there and get a one-bedroom that nobody can stay with us at. They can go to a hotel. So we need to choose our date if we're looking sometime in the fall in 2015. Literally, he gets 3 months and then he has to go out on his own because we're leaving, or do we want to go into 2016? So we're going to choose a date probably January, February of next year to start solidifying our planning. The next thing we wanted to do is, do we decide to sell or rent the current house that we have? And that's pretty much based on going on Zillow, looking at the house value, and then seeing what our monthly budget is to upkeep it, see if we want to rent it out and provide us an income and we make money off it, etc. So that's looking at that goal with a financial planner as well. Goal 3 would be, okay, so once we know where we're going, what city do we want to go to? So we're going to focus our search and hopefully decide around January next year what cities we're looking at. And it's probably going to be between Honolulu, the Salt Ponds, or Ka'ava. And then, and again, it depends on our activities that we want to do and what's around there and our housing prices and whether we're going to rent or not. So after that, that leads into, from that goal, then we go into, we'll probably need to get a realtor and begin our search. So we will look around in the area and again look at either renting or buying, and then the house size that we need. A one-bedroom we think is fine because we just need stuff for our surfboards and our golf bags and a bed and a kitchen. We aren't going to have anybody else with us. No kids. And then, and we were hoping to do that probably in May, start seriously looking at that and having a realtor over there. And then in June, my hubby works for the military, so he's been applying for jobs the past year. Maybe get a transfer over there through .gov. And then because I'm already in education and I have the job that I really want, I'm not necessarily looking to go higher. I love what I'm doing now as a program coordinator for diversity and outreach for students. If I can do something in education, since I have a teaching credential as well, I will. If not, I used to be an event planner with Bridezillas, so I can always go back into the company that I have connections with, and that's obviously I'd go into LinkedIn and go into all my connections and start hitting them up probably around January, February of next year and letting them know what my plans are. So that's my last goal, and that's our last thing to do. Any suggestions?
Sounds great. It's pretty well written.
Yeah, you sound like you have a really good plan.
Yeah, well, and it sounds frivolous, but in a way, when I talk to students, because I work with a lot of undergrads, but I think the IDP is great to start getting undergrads into it, to focus whether they really want to go into graduate school, because a lot of them think, okay, I'm going to go into graduate and research, but sometimes by the end of their year, when they do a research experience with us, they say, well, I think I want to go into industry. So taking something like this, it grabs their attention, but it starts them thinking, well, do you want to do this, how do you get there? And so that they can come up with a more simplified plan other than just what the postdocs and graduates are coming up with. So I can start this off with our RU program with our students in undergrad, and then have them develop something so that by the time they become a graduate student, then they've already have the mind frame of planning it out and seeing where they're going and see if it's for them or not.
Sounds like you've done this before.
A little. So.
And I really like how you have the deadlines for everything too. You give yourself a timeline.
Yeah, because you have to work backwards to know what you're going to do and to start planning everything. So.
Great.
Okay. Next.
I picked a project title that's a little close to home as well, and that's given me a little anxiety these days. My project title is Preschool Search for Joseph Jimenez, who is my 2.5-year-old son. My objective is to find the best school for my son. So part of my goals is to find a school by January 5th, 2015, after we come back from the holiday break and after my husband returns to his semester going back to school. Right now he stays with grandma full time, and grandma's getting a little exhausted, and right now he's around all of his cousins that are going to be going to school full time in October, so he won't have kids around him anymore. So my husband and I want him to have the socialization of going to school at the first of the year. We need to start researching schools in our area. I live in Santee right now, so I can drop my son off in the morning and my husband can pick him up. We're not sure if we want to put him in a public or more private or a Montessori school. So these are 3 different areas that we need to look into and see what these areas have to offer and if it's a best fit for our son. We need to start seeking referrals from friends and family and the community to see where they put their children into school. And then we also need to work on a budget at the end of the year, because this is a new expense for our family that we didn't have before, because our son's with grandma and grandpa. So this could be a financial impact. So we want to be sure that this is something that we can afford and make sure that this is the right decision for our family. We'd like to start interviewing teachers and doing school visits in October and November. We realize that some schools might have wait lists, so we might have to start extra early to see if we can get him into a school by the first of the year. And our long-term goal is to prepare him for kindergarten. We'd like to start him at 2 days a week since he's 2, bump him up to 3 days a week at 3, 4 days a week at 4. So by the time he does start kindergarten, he'll be ready for the full-time schedule. So this is the plan. We're leaving our child in someone's hands at a young age, but we think that the socialization would be good, and he's a little sponge right now learning everything, so I think putting him in a new environment would be good for him, but this is something that we need to focus on in the next couple of months. So that's it.
Feedback, suggestions?
Thanks for your feedback earlier. So.
I guess just find as many resources as you can to review the schools you're interested in.
Right.
You know, maybe talk to people that already have kids there. They're usually pretty good about, allowing you to speak to other kids.
Other parents.
Yeah.
For me, it's important if a teacher has been there for a long time. It means they're happy, and compared to high turnover rates, that's kind of important too. It'd be nice to have the same teacher for a few years and they've been around for a while. So, but
I just have a little bit more advice for you, because I went to this, well, my son is now 6, but he went to a preschool that we were exceedingly happy with, and he still misses it to this day.
See, that's
he
good.
still asks us to go back and visit, so we do that sometimes. But I think the interview part that you have there is very important, and talking to other parents. But at the same time, I think like when you walk into a place, you immediately get a feel for it, and you just know when you...
And not just me, my son also.
Yeah.
We're going to watch to see how he interacts and how he feels just by walking in and
So I'd say take what you learn from other parents. I mean, it's important, but take it with a grain of salt, because I've also found that some other parents are very critical.
Everyone has a different
And,
experience.
everyone,
Different goals for their
Everyone.
child.
So, yeah, I mean, all of that is important too, but listen to yourself as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next. Best wishes.
Thank you.
All right, so the goal I chose is something that I meet with all of our PhD students and talk about, and that is for them to take their qualifying exam in advanced to candidacy on time. So the university gives students 4 years, our department only gives them 3 years. So in the fall, I start this conversation and meet with every student and go over these list of things they need to do. And one important thing I stress to them as I go over the things they need to do is not to let big chunks of time pass, so that by the time they get to spring quarter, they're trying to cram all these things in all at once. So the goal is to take their qualifying exam, advance the candidacy on time. So the first thing I ask them is, how often do you meet with your advisor? Do you have a regular schedule set? If they don't, then standardize the time and the frequency that you meet with them, once every 2 weeks, once a week, whatever your style is, however much oversight you need, just standardize that format. So once they get on their advisor's schedule regularly and can start to talk about the subject, then I tell them to create a list of potential committee members. And I started to pencil in the deadlines as well. So start of fall quarter, that's when you start thinking about it. Standardize the time to meet with your advisor. Then by the week 5, halfway through the fall quarter, create a list of potential members. Then by the end of fall quarter, you've whittled that list down and you meet with the potential members, see which members will fit, which could serve, which can't serve. And then by start of winter quarter, when we come back from break, I tell them to constitute their committee, finalize it, get it on the books. Then once they have a committee together, develop a proposed set of projects or chapters for their dissertation. And so that would be probably middle of winter quarter. Then probably by the end of winter quarter, number 6, submit a sample proposal to all their committee members. And then submit chapter 1 for publication. Some students, that's required of them. Then schedule a date for the exam, and then finally hold mock presentations for fellow students so they can run through their proposal and get feedback from other students. So that's my list of 8. I wasn't quite sure what I was doing or where I was going with it, other than this is something that I talk about all the time with students.
At what point do you hold a mock presentation for fellow students? When do they do that?
Probably a couple weeks before the actual exam date.
So they submit a chapter of their dissertation for publication before their proposal is even officially accepted?
Yeah, some advisors require that they have something published, either submitted for publication or actually published by the time they take the qualifying exam, as proof that they can write at a sufficient scientific level.
A lot of these to me seem like things that students could need help making micro goals for, constitute a committee, well, how do I do that, or
right.
Obviously developing the proposed project, that by itself is a huge undertaking, so.
Yeah, some of them are a lot more time and labor intensive versus others. Like create a list of potential members, that's pretty easy. The small community of people that you work with who may be able to serve on your committee. But yeah, then something like develop the projects you're going to work on and what the outline for your proposal is going to be. That's going to be a lot more time intensive.
Do they have a template, like for their sample proposal? Is there a template or develop proposed projects, chapters? Do they have a template to work off of, or samples?
There's not, and it varies by kind of discipline that we have down there and by advisor as well. So that's always a big concern from students. They want us to give them a template, something to follow. And it always just kind of goes back to, well, if you're meeting with your advisor regularly, frequently, you're having this conversation, then you'll get the answers to those questions.
I didn't number mine, so. I love photography and I love history, and so I want to be the family archiver of, what do I need to put this on? Just hold it up.
You can. Okay. There and then
I can just hold it. Okay. I love photography and I love history, and so I want to be the family archiver for my family. And so I would like to do several things once I retire to be able to start implementing that. So I may have these kind of out of order, so I apologize for that. But so I guess the steps would be I would want to contact my family members for their input, for their information on their histories and photos. And then I've always wanted to set up a website where people can interact, put their own photos up, and I can add to it, and people can go back and take things and make their own compilations instead of having to wonder who's out there, who's got what pictures from what family member. I also would like to find some online resources for genealogy to just kind of explore that and see if everybody's on the right track as who their ancestors really are. Everybody has ideas, but sometimes you're not quite sure, or there's stories that nobody knows about. We had a reunion not too long ago, and that was pretty interesting. There were some family members that not everybody knew, so there were some surprises there. I would also like to be able to create hard copy materials to hand out to family members and especially my children so that they have something to give down to their kids too. I have a grandfather who wrote about his life story, and he's the only one in our family that did that, and it was really interesting to hear his experience, and I'd like to kind of have that in place so that it's not lost, you know. And then maybe organize a reunion for my family so that we can all get together and share things, and also make plans to make sure that this thing is an ongoing thing, and that we all contribute and can have each other's information so we keep in touch, because the older you get and the larger your families get, the more you kind of disperse, and people, you know, lose touch with each other. So that's kind of my goals, my objectives. So
with that in mind, with your family, because you have so many family members and so many different ones, like you said, coming up on a website, would you, for example, think about, you know, doing it by last names, by family names, and
that's
because you have to, because everybody marries off and they have different ones. So this is the Smiths here, and this is the Does, and this is the Johnsons. You know, it's all tied into.
Good point.
That, but it's subdivided into your, you know, your family name.
That's important, because I know in my own experience, if I go on a website and it's not easy to follow, or I don't understand it, or it's just hard to flip through whatever, scroll down, then I won't use it. So that's actually very important. So thank you for that. Yeah. And I don't have a time frame. I didn't put the time frame in there, so I'm going to go back and do that.
Yeah.
That's really important, because
Yeah.
definitely, yeah. So I think some of these are kind of a little bit out of order. So.
Do you have family members that are website developers?
I'm sure there's some younger people that, you know, almost everybody that's in the younger generation loves to do stuff like that. But that's a good point too. I have to contact some of them and recruit their help. Yeah. So.
Is Charmaine the only one left?
Hi everyone, I'm Charmaine. So I'll just give you a little bit of background information. I had a very interesting day yesterday. I'm the student affairs manager in the ECE department, and yesterday 2 of the student affairs staff members gave me their 2 weeks notice on the same day. So I got one piece of very interesting information at 10:30 a.m. and then another one at 1:30 p.m. So what's on my mind right now is filling 2 positions that I'm about to post to try to get new staff members. Oh, and to add to that, another one of my staff members had her last day of work a couple weeks ago. That was one that I had known about for months. She left to go to grad school on the East Coast, but now we've got 2 more. And I haven't finalized the replacement for that first undergrad position, and now I have 2 grad positions. So basically I have 3 open positions right now, and this is me freaking out.
So your goal is to take up yoga.
So what I thought about was, okay, I'm going to do this from the perspective of someone who might apply to one of my positions. And so the career objective would be to work in student affairs, doing grad student advising and financial support. Now, I didn't go into all the details of like numbering 5 different goals or anything. And first I was thinking about goals from the perspective of, you know, this hypothetical person. And then I realized that halfway through I was thinking more about what I'm looking for in a person, and I just kept writing. But so if someone is thinking about working in student affairs, and I have actually had a couple of informational interviews, people have come and asked me, you know, what would I need to do if I wanted to get into this line of work. So getting experience as an advisor, and for this particular position that I'm thinking about, because it also encompasses doing the graduate financial support, so it would be someone who would need to know how to do the PPS entries and understanding of the PPS system. And the training, the PPS training, I don't know if any of you do that right now, but PPS training, it's a very involved kind of training session. I think it takes like 3 or 4 days of training that you have to go through, you know, the staff ed. But then you're able to, you know, do new hires and, you know, do all the changes. Grad students, you know, they're either GSRs or on fellowships, or, you know, there's a number of different ways they can be supported. So I'm looking for someone who would know how to do all of that, or who would be interested in getting the training to be able to do that. So then, you know, this is where I kind of flipped into, okay, these are other things that I'm looking for someone in this position. And, you know, strong analytical abilities, accounting experience, good communication skills, empathy for working with students, and flexibility, because there are so many changes, especially when it comes to the grad student support. So a faculty member might say, okay, I want to support these 5 students on this index. And then the next day, they're like, wait, I had a change in, you know, my grant. So now these 2 will be on that index, and these move them over to here. And so a lot of times, you know, just when you think you're done, you realize you're not done, and that's kind of like a constant state for this kind of position. But it's sort of a complicated position because it does encompass so many different things. So I'm also thinking about like restructuring, and I'm going to have to sit down and really think about some of these issues in terms of, you know, restructuring and what I really want in both of these positions that I'm looking at. So this is actually very helpful, even though I kind of didn't have a chance to think it all through today while we were doing it. But I can definitely see the value of breaking it down into, you know, micro goals and getting a very good sense of what it is that you're looking for and the goals. So I don't know if anyone has any questions, or if anyone is looking for a new job.
I have a question. Am
Yes.
I allowed to tell my OGS colleagues?
Yes, you are definitely allowed to tell your OGS colleagues. Please do.
Have you advertised for jobs before in your, I mean, you probably have.
I have.
They have those
Yes.
templates online too for job descriptions, which are really helpful.
Definitely.
Sometimes it's just hard to articulate what you want, and they have a lot of examples there already.
Yeah.
Sending them to listservs on campus, you know,
Yes.
to department listservs is helpful too, because, you know, even though you have students, but they just graduated, they're looking for to stay on campus, and not necessarily to go on grad school. They're just, okay, now I want to work. You know, so that's great for
Yeah, that's
considering
true.
departments. We say, hey, I got somebody that wants to move up and do something.
Yeah.
You know, so
I'll definitely like put the word out there in that sense.
Other than just the job bulletin, you know, all the department people and all the listservs, you know, from coordinators to whatever, we have students that need jobs.
Yes, and I've seen actually a few examples of students who were in Ph.D. programs who, you know, go 2 or 3 years and then realize, you know, maybe thinking about these kinds of things that isn't the road that they want to pursue, and they've gotten jobs as like grad coordinators or, you know, various other positions on campus, and they've done extremely well, because I think, you know, 1 or 2 or maybe 3 years of grad school really gives you a lot of the experience that you need kind of on the other side of the table to be able to work with grad students and, you know, help them achieve their goals. So, you know, they know what they're going through, and they know what sorts of obstacles they face and the issues that come up for them.
And it's a good experience for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, because everybody needs experience. So I have wedding planning, and I'm also education. And you don't think they go together, but they actually do.
They do, yeah.
They do. So,
Yeah.
so it's another side for them to say, hey, I'd like to do this, or I'm working on this, and then they say, oh, I really like this.
Thanks.
I would call other JSOE grad advisors and MSOs too to see exactly what everyone does, because we're all so different in what we do, even though we all belong to JSOE. So we're trying to break down the positions a little bit more, maybe get ideas, myself included, on what we do, and just kind of figure out how you're going to do these new positions. And in fact, I think we should all have a powwow anyway with all the grad advisors, just to kind of share ideas.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I know, because even like the same title code means so many different things in different departments. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, but that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I wanted to thank you all for being so game with the recording. I appreciate that. I know it's like not quite what you signed up for, but I do appreciate your understanding on that. So just to wrap things up, so first of all, I hope you've realized that IDPs are not necessarily just for students. They might be useful in your own lives. And just to remind you, they're required for NIH-funded grad students and postdocs and encouraged for everyone. And you guys are in charge of training students and tracking their completion of the IDPs. And so here's contact information for me and then Ginger Hazen, who's in charge of the postdocs. At the Career Services Center, Tony Mahoney, and the Center for Teaching Development, Peter Newberry. And any last questions or feedback?
Can we get all of that somewhere?
Sure, yeah, I can email it out. Mm-hmm. Also, a version of this is actually on our IDP website, so that, because we've already got, there's a version of this that's aimed at students, and you can download the student-centered one, and I've got a script too. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. Take your posters or throw them away, you know, as you see fit, and take more pizza if you want. And if you did not sign the release form, please do so. And yeah, thanks.
Thank you. This was really helpful.
This has been a UC San Diego Blinkcast.